If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowances for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor look too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life for broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at the beginning, and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are done, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 40 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. The Kipling poem it's one of my favorites since I was a boy at school. My father read it to me once, and I think it to me as a little boy, it summed up what a man should be. And later on, when I became an actor, there were a couple of lines in there that affected me. One was, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, it's a very good thing for an actor, because an actor's life doesn't consist of any medium things. Everything is either a hit or absolute disaster. So there was that one. And then there is another line, which is, if you can hear the words you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, well, that's the press as far as actors are concerned, because you're always seeing something and you go, wait a minute, I never said that. And so it stayed with me all my life, right until this very day. You know, the war, for a start, took my dad away for 6 years. I never forgave him for that. You know, war disrupts everything. I was evacuated on my own and ill-treated and all that sort. Everything went wrong, you know. Peace, things go right. I was a soldier when I was 19. I spent my 19th year in Korea as a Fusilier infantryman. And so I know what I'm talking about when I talk about war. And it's the most disgusting thing that you could ever think of. And I've also noticed with every single war has been declared by men who are too old to go. And it's made me suspicious.
That was Sir Michael Caine. That gentleman read If by Rudyard Kipling. And today I have a special treat. A gentleman on this program, Kaiser's Castle, which you are all listening to at this time. And his name is Dave Milner. And he is an outstanding man. Dave, you can fill them in. I want you to give where they can find you now before you start telling them why it's going to be harder to find you because of social media's complete aberration of what they've done to you. And that's important to me. And so you're going to be able to share it a couple times during this program, as often as you want. I want you to pimp everything about what you do. I want you to tell the truth like you always do, because you are the man that what I can't. I don't want to screw up your intro because I'm gonna screw it up by calling you from that one program that I first learned about you on, and I will butcher it because I'm just that way. I won't remember it right. So please go ahead, brother, and I'll mute.
All right. Well, first of all, Kaiser, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm just back from 2 or 3 weeks of being away from the news, and I'll get into that, the reason why I do that 3 times a year later on. But yeah, my name is Dave Milner, and I have a show called The Unpleasant Blind Guy. Runs off of SHR Media, and I'm also heard on the Western Free Radio Network. And I'm also associated with the English Defense League radio show. That's heard on blogtalkradio.com. Now, my show times for The Unpleasant Blind Guy are Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, and on Saturday at midnight Eastern. And started something new and different, or going to start something new and different within the next few weeks. I'm going to be merging the program a little bit with EDL Radio, so you'll be hearing a little bit more about what's going on across the pond, because, as we know, the march of progressivism isn't just in the States here with us, it's international. And we're going to take that a little bit further out in the international plane, and once in a while I'll throw in programs like maybe a rebroadcast of this one, where it's just me, or me and a guest, or me being a guest, or me being a pest. If people want to get hold of me, they can get hold of me at Twitter for now, at UBG Contact. I'm also available as Agador right now on places like Spreely and Mumblet, and of course Gab. And sadly, I did have a Facebook account, but I was purged as part of the removal of a lot of people who question Islam and its effects on the world. So I no longer have a Facebook presence. Not that that bothers me a whole lot. So that's the basics of how people can get hold of me, and we can get into a little bit more of both the purge and the vacation, because the vacation will lead me into something else that happened here recently, just in the States. So you call that Kaiser.
Hey, brother, you go with it. This is your show. This is all about you today, because it's important news that a lot of people need to know. You go as in depth as you want. Okay, I'm making sure that this is being captured on my channel for people to know.
All right. Well, hey. Well, let me just say to start off that, my ego can beat up your ego any day of the week,
Of course.
When it comes to ego, I got a huge one, man. Not bragging here. But
it's not bragging if you can do it, brother, and that's the truth.
That's true. The only time that ego, and this is one of the problems that podcasters have once in a while, is some of us will allow our egos to get in the way of the message, and sometimes even get in each other's way, and that's something that irritates me a little bit. So I try to rein my big fat slob ego in. But let's first of all get into why I take a break 3 times a year from the news. And when I say that, I mean literally from the news. I knew of one news event that occurred between late April and the 13th of this month of May, and that was that President Trump screened the movie Unplanned, and sadly kept it a secret. And that was really the only news item that I knew about that occurred. Um, and I did this. I do this partly to just to save my sanity, because covering a lot of the issues that involve Islam means covering a lot of violence, and it means covering a lot of man's inhumanity to man. And sometimes you need to just take a step back, take a break from that, and just enjoy life, and enjoy what you're fighting for. Enjoy what you're, enjoy the America that God has privileged us to live in. And I first started doing this as kind of an impromptu thing. It wasn't planned. This was after the Sandy Hook school shooting. I believe this was on Twitter, and this was while the coverage was still going on. These poor kids' bodies weren't even cold. And you had lefties on there yelling, ban guns, ban guns, ban guns. And I just said, oh, okay. These, no sympathy or empathy for the kids, their families, their friends, anything. Just, hey, here's an opportunity. Let's ban guns. And I just got completely disgusted, and I turned the net off. And after I came back a few weeks later, I had a lot of friends jump down my throat saying they were about ready to call Burlington PD and get them to come out and make a welfare check, because I just wanted to divorce myself from the whole thing for a while. And I came
totally
later.
Get that.
Yeah. I mean, it was completely disgusting to me, Kaiser, that people would react that way. It's a horror when things like that happen, and you have to let people grieve. Get into the politics later if you want, but let them grieve. And but later on, I found that first experience so restorative that I began to do this 3 times a year. So in April and in August and around Christmas time, I take 2 or 3 weeks off, and just enjoy it. And I really think that it does help a lot, because for people who follow the news a lot and everything, it gets soul draining to just look at the carnage and the idiocy that goes on day in and day out without let up, especially now.
Yeah, in this information age that we'll discuss later. I mean, this 24-hour news cycle, I don't know that it's good for the human mind, but that's my own 2 cents on that. And go ahead, brother. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, Kaiser, you got it, man. I mean, I was about to say, I grew up in a time when really you got the news a little bit in the morning and a little bit at noonish, and then you got the evening news and the 10 or 11 o'clock news, and then you went to bed, and that was it. Your big news was in the evening, and unless you worked on a newspaper,
that was back in the day, brother. Remember, they used to turn the TV off at like 2 in the morning. And it was till 2 till 6 or 5:30. That was
the farm report.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would come on at 5:30 with the farm report, boy.
Yep, excitement.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you'd get to sit there and look at a picture of the Indian in the headdress and the test pattern.
Yep.
And that was it. Now it's constant. If you have an interest in this stuff, you can get it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It is nonstop, and I think you're right. I think it does wear on people, and that's why I had to take that time off. And I try, guys, to make sure that I work quite a bit ahead of time, so that people who listen to the Unpleasant Blind Guy will have new shows, even if I'm not there. They'll just be shows that they haven't heard before. But yeah, I do take that time off, and I don't apologize for it. And I intend to keep on doing it. I'm looking forward to August when when I'll get some more time off, because it does help a whole lot. But I had to tell you, Kaiser, to start things off, um, I was really quite proud of some people in the news, and that doesn't happen often. I think the last time that I had this kind of pride was when the people who attended that church where that racist a-hole went in and shot up all those people, went to his pre-hearing and forgave him.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was a beautiful moment, and I was so proud of them, and I was so proud to be an American that day. Um, and I haven't felt that pride really in our people since, until I saw this last night. And this is a clip you can find on YouTube, guys. If you go looking for it.
The link will be in the description.
Okay, this is, believe it or not, this blew my mind, from the Washington Post, and it's titled "We Are People, Not a Statement." Students walk out of Colorado shooting vigil in protest, and it amazed me that the Washington Post actually had this on YouTube and covered it. These students were at this vigil after this school shooting, and by the way, it was later found out that one of the shooters was this anti-Christian guy who joked about school shootings. But they were at this vigil for him and everything, and it was all going great until the politicians got up and grabbed the microphone and started talking about banning guns and this and that, and the students just started walking out.
Pontificating. That's what they do.
Exactly. Yeah. Pontificating is a great word for it. That's what they started doing. And the students just got up on their hind legs and started walking out. And then they came back afterwards. The students did. And they took over the mic and they basically told the press, which I think this is who they were addressing, that we're not props. This is a discussion that we can have, but at a later time. We didn't come here for this. And for kids, and Kaiser, you know this, how heavily influenced and brainwashed kids are now in our public schools. For kids to come back and do this just gave me a hope and a swelling of pride in those kids, and the hope again that they're not too far gone. That the spirit of free thought and individual thought is not too far gone in the American people, in American young people, which made me feel even better.
Well, brother, I just to add to your comment, having raised a young man that now is a gentleman, fellow brother Marine, it's important to know that I have had the privilege of helping to talk and talking with young men, honestly, and that was something that's very important. The sense of mentoring. As a bastard, I would never be who I am today without proper mentoring. Coming from, just a little backstory, I don't know if you really know, from pretty much a Marxist thought process when I first went over and saw the wall in Europe in East Germany, the Berlin Wall, the Iron Curtain. This is something that's important for people to know, and I'm glad that you're talking about it, but I never lost hope in the youth. I think the youth are going to actually be the ones to correct this, and that's my own opinion.
Well, I got to tell you, you're not the first person to say this, and it's people have been talking about Generation Z now for close to a year, because some of these kids are coming up. They're the ones coming up. They're now just now becoming freshmen and sophomores in high school and things like that, and they're sick of this mess. They can they can see the idiocy that's going on with the adults, and they can see the idiocy that's going on in schools, and they can tell that there's something wrong, and they don't want to wind up as casualties in this war of propaganda.
Right.
And I think that what we saw in that clip from that vigil was part of it. I think it is true what you're saying is that there is going to be a new awakening among these kids, and that gives me hope. You know, Kaiser, I do a show called The Way Back, and for the next few weeks anyway. Um, I'm my show, The Unpleasant Blind Guy, is running The Way Back commentaries, where I talk with people like the Underground Professor and Ken McClinton and people like that, and we talk about preserving the documents and the basic philosophy of the United States of America. And you spoke about it last time we talked in preserving our kids and having more kids, which I agreed with. And yeah, I think the pendulum may be swinging the other way, and with all of the bad news that there is now nowadays, and with all of the retainers of Satan that seem to be arrayed against us, it was a genuine pleasure to see those kids out there doing that and saying that to the press, that no, we're individuals, we're not props. So there's that first little bit, a little bit of hope to start things off.
Well, that's awesome. I'll tell you something that struck me with what you said. I'm sure you're old enough, just like I am, to. I think you might have gotten me by a year or two, but anyways, I'm fairly certain we both remember Paul Harvey's now infamous "If I Were the Devil" commentary.
Oh yeah.
And when you look at it, it shows a lot of foreboding, and people, I'll link that in the description if you haven't seen it. And the more interesting point is, I'm not saying everybody's going to religion or anything like that. That's not, I don't pontificate. Your religion is a personal thing, just like mine is. It's not something that's ever been in a mix in America, actually. They've tried to do it a few times and failed miserably. Remember raising G-rated kids or PG-rated kids in an X-rated world. Tipper Gore is the one who actually wrote that, who was the wife of Vice President Al Gore. And so I don't want to get lost in that minutia, but there is a sense and a direct, honest sense in the American people of what is good, what's honorable, what is bad, what is distasteful. And I think we've broached a line, and honestly, I have to even hold myself to account for this. I mean, yes, I've made my effect in my own area, but did I go to my politicians and say, what the social justice warriors are doing right now is completely off the rails? Did I go out there and protest? And that's the thing. The left will protest, a small minority with a loud voice. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. And yet, a lot of times, look at the basic... a guy, I can't remember, I think it's in Pennsylvania, goes out to where people are just praying in front of a Planned Parenthood. And if you don't think Planned Parenthood is something that they're trying to do on purpose, then you're wrong. But they're just simply praying, and this alderman or whatever he was, councilman, goes out there and he's like, dox these people, find them. I want to know their names. I'll give you $100 for each person. We have broached into pure evil, brother, and that's my 2 cents on that.
Well, that we have, yes, and for anybody who wants a perspective on Planned Parenthood, there are many, but go to Black Genocide. I believe it's blackgenocide.org. All right, and it'll show you how the population of um, of African Americans in this country has you know almost gotten to a point of stagnation, and it won't take much to tip it over to a point of decline.
Thanks to
And
Margaret Sanger.
correct. Yes, Margaret Sanger was oh wow, she was a super mega racist. I mean, she called black people weeds. All right.
A eugenicist.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she was that too. I mean, and this is the woman who, the Margaret Sanger Award. That's what Hillary Clinton won, and Hillary Clinton was proud to win it. Um, and that gives you a real perspective on Planned Parenthood, that it was started by someone like that, and it's continuing, and now it's gotten to a point, not only where it has wide support, but now, of course, they've graduated to infanticide. It's like, well, the baby's born. Oh, well, the mother may have issues with the family because she's had a baby out of wedlock, or because it's inconvenient for her to have the baby. Yeah, just snap its neck. It's gotten to that point, and a lot of pro-lifers have been created just from this, because the left have just decided, you know what, we want to snatch it all now. We want it all right now. And I think, Kaiser, that they're very close to jumping the shark here, and making things very difficult for themselves, or at least that's what I hope.
I think they already have, brother. Honestly, look, me and my twin sister were both bastards. It's on our birth certificates. But the thing is, my father was a Sicilian. They still had honor back in the day. And his father ended up all the poundage and the child support. $60 a month for 2 kids, $30 each. That's all that was back in the day. And that's in the 60s. And it amazes me that woman was able to raise 2 kids on, she didn't even have a high school education. And yet I've gone to college, my sister has gone to college. She's dead now. But I mean, there was a time when the weeds weren't just blacks, they were white, hillbilly trash.
Oh yeah, poor whites. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something I don't think has been drilled in to our youth, that life is not to be thrown away.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, I think a thing that has happened in our society, and entertainment is partly responsible for this, um, is that people have been devalued. You see this in a lot of people think it's a small thing, and it's not really a big thing, but it teaches bad lessons. You see this in things like cartoons. I reference Teen Titans Go, and Beast Boy, or the Golden Girls, and the one from Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
There seems to always be, or there seems to be often in a lot of these quote unquote comedy shows, one person that everybody can treat like a piece of crap, and it's somehow okay. And then maybe one episode in about every 50 or so, they'll go a little bit too far, and then there'll be a nice little ending. But in the end, again, they'll treat them like a piece of crap. So I think over the years,
Right.
people have been taught that it's okay to treat people badly uh, if they want to, for whatever reason. That it's okay to treat people badly. It's okay to devalue people, and that's not what we need to be doing in this country. We need to be pulling together, because there are people who definitely want to push us apart. Um,
Hell yeah.
yeah. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about, that obviously now, speaking of pushing people apart, is again, the whole Ramadan thing that's going on right now. And now, um, on the English Defense League radio show, which comes on at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays and Sundays, Blog Talk Radio. The last one we had was, of course, Sunday, and on that day, this is according to the religionofpeace.com. A great place to go if you want to just get some quick facts about Islam. Um, that was day 7 of Ramadan, and at that point there had been 41 attacks. I don't remember how many people had been killed. This is
The Ramabamathon.
Yeah. Today is day 9. Now there have been 52 attacks, and there have been 234 people killed. Okay. They're reporting one quote unquote right wing extremist attack with one person killed. I don't know what that one's about, but that pales in comparison to what the Mohammedans do at this time of year. And that really brings into focus a big reason for things like the desire for Brexit, which was voted on in the UK. Passed, yes. And Americans should give a crap about this because we need to leave the United Nations, just as the UK needs to leave the EU.
Exactly.
We don't need to be part of a superstate. People say, well, then if we weren't, then we wouldn't cooperate with each other and things like that. That's what bupkis. I mean, before the United Nations, the United States of America was doing what we always do. Sending relief all around the world. Whenever there's a disaster, Americans open up their wallets. We are some of the most giving people on the planet, and it's because we're a prosperous nation, thanks to the free market. Okay, that means we can bless not only our own people but other people, and we do that. And we don't need a super state to help us do that. So the struggle for one of our best allies to leave a super state is something that we should pay attention to and, in my opinion, support.
I agree. What people fail to realize is the EU was exactly what Germany had visionized, and look who leads the EU with Juncker. And the other thing that you brought up that's so poignant, I mean, you bring up a lot of good stuff, but the truth be known, there is an issue that the UN first started out as the League of Nations, and the League of Nations was a failure, and yet we have propped it up since we restarted the League of Nations, which is what we need to refer to the UN as, in my humble opinion. It is the League of Nations. And we just need to dissolve it. We need to say, get out of New York. That's what trade deals are for. That's why we have customs agents. That's why we have Border Patrol. And that is the truth. And you are speaking truth to power, brother. And you know what? My generation may be lost. The boomer generation may be lost, but maybe Generation Z, maybe they're not lost, and maybe they can voice their concerns. Now they're becoming of voting age, and they get informed. And sadly, the media won't inform them, but it's up to us now, brother.
You're right. And I'd like you to expound a little bit more on that, because I have to go and visit the electric tinkle chamber, but I will be back momentarily. So if you want to talk a little bit more about the UN, I'll be right back with you.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's been my experience with the UN until Dave comes back. I'll just tell you, I've done several missions for the UN, also for USAID. There's a lot of different things that, look, when you talk about globalist and globalism, you have to understand those policies are enforced by our own nation states, capital S states. And if you're on my channel, you already know what that means. That means your nation state. Small s is your state, where you live. I live in Ohio. Dave lives in another state. People in Germany live in Munich. Well, that's a small s state. Or they live in Berlin. That's a small s state. You know, they're different provinces. I'm just giving cities out, but people can look it up and see the different states. Bavaria, you know, and whatnot. I'm not going to get deep into all that. But the point being is, nobody on a local level, and that's where politics comes from, the local level. We know where the resources need to be used best. The government, big S, does not. And that's what they fear. Honestly, they did this with Reagan the last time. They vilified it. If you think what Trump's going through is unique, you're absolutely wrong, because it happened to Reagan. And what happened to him? John Hinckley, who the Hinckley family and the Bush family were very close friends with. And Hinckley's still the only person that was an attempted, I'm not even going to say the word, of a sitting president that got to go home and see mommy and gets weekend outings. So figure that one out. And remember, Bush Sr. was forced upon our Ronald Reagan. Now look 2 years into it. How many people were forced upon Trump? And who, like, I'm speaking to Speaker Ryan. He was a globalist, and who was the one who blocked, when Trump had an actual majority, who was it who blocked the wall or a vote for the wall? That would be Speaker Ryan. And so what you saw was an attempted soft coup. Speaking of, I've talked about coups before. You need the 3 M's: military, media, and money. And they had 2 of them, but they didn't have the military. And
they had 2, but not 3. Yeah, you're right, man.
But we need to kick out the UN, and then we need to reinstate our firm belief and agreement that our country is our country, and we will hold it sovereign. This sovereign citizenship, that's true in some ways, but in other ways, there's something bigger, and it's called your country. And when Trump said, I'm a nationalist, well, guess what? In my opinion, there's nothing wrong with a nationalist. And they always try to say, oh, nationalist is national social. Wait, what's that second word? Socialist? That's that second word.
No, that's Bernie.
Yeah, that's Bernie. Yeah, and the same thing with these people saying they're democratic socialists. Look, when I was in Germany, the DDR was the Deutsches Democratic Republic. That was East Germany, okay? But they were the Socialist Democratic Republic. Notice how these phraseologies are still coming to hold. They just change word line. It's absolutely disgusting.
It's like calling this nation a democracy
when we're not.
Yeah. When we're not. And sadly, I even hear some conservatives fall into that trap. But lefties do it all the time. I almost never hear a leftist call our nation a republic. And to quote the underground professor, we are a constitutionally federated republic. That's what we are.
That's exactly true. And the first person that ever pointed it out to me before I went into federal service or the military, Reginald Wagstaff, a black English professor, okay? And I said, we're a democracy, being a high school brain full of mush Marxist at the time. And he goes, where do you see democracy in your Pledge of Allegiance. You don't. It's to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's a fact. And the other thing they fail to talk about, and this really irks my soul to my core, is that we are a small s experiment. That means all those 50 states and even our territories, we get to experiment, and maybe we'll find something that works better, or maybe we won't. But we're not going to waste time on the American populace if one small state, and honestly, the Civil War, for everything that people will say is a virtue, it was a bane to states' rights. And I do call the Civil War the Northern War of Aggression, because you remember how that war started.
Oh, certainly, yes.
And I'm from the North, and it saddens me.
Well, I'll say this about the Civil War. Now, a lot of people point out, and rightly, that the South had in its Constitution, the Confederate States of America had in its Constitution provision for slavery. In fact, no state could have applied to be in the Confederacy had they won if they did not advocate and use slavery,
which was going to be replaced by the cotton gin. So I mean, that was, well, nobody could see technology.
I look at it this way. All right. Yes, the big bugs in the South were fighting for that. That's what they wanted to fight for. The poor whites in the South, most of them didn't want slavery because it took away their jobs. The poor whites in the South were fighting the Civil War because, as you said, they felt that it was a war of aggression.
Yeah, and they were under indentured servitude too.
In a lot of cases, they were. Yes, see, this is something that people don't understand. Indentured servitude was big in all over our nation for a long time, and you did not have to be black to be a slave. That is not something that a lot of people understand, but you were talking about globalism and the difference between superstates and the United States. And one of the things that strikes me as a big reason to save the United States of America and save our philosophy and preserve it is the fact that ours is the only nation that I know of that gathers sovereign individuals into a sovereign nation.
Yep.
It's fantastic. Okay, we're a constitutionally federated republic, but we're also a confederation of sovereign individuals. Each and every citizen has their own power, and more power than ever in history, ever in recorded history. Which really gives me a big reason to keep on supporting our country. And yes, what you said about Generation Z, hopefully they will continue this. Now, when I was talking about the Brexit thing and the EU, we have to watch out for the false prophets, for the double dealers and people like that, like Paul Ryan.
Nigel Farage.
And Nigel Farage. Now, that's the other headline, which I know you're going to have in your links that I want to talk about. Nigel Farage is willing to deal with Jeremy Corbyn in the United Kingdom to get what he calls Brexit. Now, two things about that. First of all, what Nigel Farage calls Brexit may not be what the people of the UK voted for. And I'll just tell your listeners what they voted for. I've seen the ballot. The vote was very simple. Do you want to remain in the European Union, or do you want to leave the European Union?
Right.
That's it. No other treaty stipulations, no conditions, no anything else. Do you want to stay? Do you want to leave? That was what was on the ballot. And most people voted to leave. But you've had people like Theresa May, who's the prime minister over there, delaying the process and putting condition after condition on it. It's turned into Brexit in name only. And the country over there, Kaiser, is a powder keg. And you have people
Oh,
who
I know.
championed Brexit, like Nigel Farage, um, another double dealer. Americans, you know how people like Paul Ryan and John Boehner and people like that claimed to be Republicans and claimed to be conservatives, and yet just let the libs run wild. Well,
Complete disclosure, I'm from Ohio. John
yeah.
Bonner has not been in my Bonner has not been in my district. I never would have voted for him if he was.
Oh, I'm sure.
But the point is, it is a two-headed snake that feeds the same globalist power. And of course, you're a friend of mine. You can say whatever you want about yourself, but I always find it funny that if somebody identifies a problem, globalist, people who are banksters, Smedley Butler even talked about the banksters and the different companies. His famous speech, which I'll link in the description, on I was a strong arm man for the white shoe boys on Wall Street. Famous speech. And Smedley Butler won the Medal of Honor twice. And was very correct. And he even stopped a coup against FDR that they tried to pull. And we're seeing the same thing. History does not repeat. It rhymes, brother. And
Oh, yeah. Sure.
But they
Yeah.
always say if you use those terminologies, well, you're anti-Semitic, you're anti-Jewish. You know what? Some of those people happen to be Jewish. It happens to be what it is. But that doesn't make all Jews bad. And that's where it gets twisted because globalism is not just a Jewish thing. Bonner is not a Jewish guy.
Oh, no.
And so that's why and you have neocons, neoconservatives, and neo-progs, neo-progressives. Hillary Clinton's one. Are anybody I just mentioned Jewish? I don't think so. And that's my 2 cents.
No, you're right about that. I mean that's a red herring that the left puts up to try and distract people from the realities of what you just said. That the globalists are in both parties, in all parties, and not just in this country. I mean, I talked about Nigel Farage willing to
Right.
make a deal with Jeremy Corbyn in the UK just so he can get what he calls Brexit. Now, for Americans who don't know who Jeremy Corbyn is, this is a guy who has powwowed and is very good friends with Hamas members and with members of the Irish Republican Army. And you may have to do a little bit of research to find out the kind of evil stuff that the IRA did in the UK in the 1970s and 80s. They did things like blew up buses with children in them and stuff like that. These were some nasty individuals, and Jeremy Corbyn is right in there with them. He's basically their version. I would say, Kaiser, that he's their version of Nancy Pelosi, and he stands a good chance of being their next prime minister. I mean, this guy is a complete dirtbag. And for Nigel Farage, who a lot of people over here in the States consider to be a hero because of Brexit, to deal with him just shows Farage's true colors. Nigel Farage is a politico. I think he's using Brexit. He has created a thing called the Brexit Party, which is running in direct opposition to the United Kingdom Independence Party, which is the real Brexit Party. And I think he's doing it just to draw votes off of them.
Spite them like Perot did to Bush Sr., which honestly,
Right.
we dodged the bullet with Bush Sr., but we got more of an, I'm going to put this non-politically correct, ass fucking from Bill Clinton, Billy Boy Clinton.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
but
definitely.
hey, look, Carter was replaced by Clinton as being the biggest failure president we had, and I never thought we'd see another one like that. And
Until
Obama
Obama.
proved me wrong. And
Oh yeah.
it makes me laugh, honestly, brother, that there's still this false left-right paradigm. Because if you put both hands out, right and left, and see where people kill people. Look, they say Hitler killed 6 million, whatever. That number can be in dispute. It can't, whatever. I'm not even going to get in that debate. But what I will say is communism does the same thing. Who has more people killed, Nazi Germany or communism?
Well,
Well, distinct.
Hitler is said to have killed 6 million people. Stalin is said conservatively to have killed
Then Pol
30
Pot,
million.
and then Pol
Mm-hmm.
Pot,
Yep.
and then you add in Mao, which remember that's why the difference is Obama was a Marxist, which is a Russian communist, just like Kennedy was. Remember, Kennedy was undermining Reagan during that time. That stuff came out when the KGB dropped all their files on how many times he said, "We're working for you, not against you." And also, a brother of mine comes on my program, Baz. He has worked against the IRA. And the last show we did, he outed a lot of stuff with, honestly, his time with the IRA. When he went to Afghanistan and other places, we both went to different places. He's English, by the way. Probably would agree with you on most of what you say, but maybe not all. But that's okay. We can always agree to disagree, and you'd love to talk to him, trust me. But the interesting thing is, he's like, we're noticing the same bomb building skills. And it's because the IRA actually had scientists, people going out there becoming physicists to learn how to do things. And guess who were paying them? Muslim extremists to come there and teach them how to do things.
They
You,
trained at some of the same camps
yes,
as well.
yes,
Yes.
and
Um,
that's a fact.
the yes. You had Muslims and IRA people at the same time together training in some of the same terrorist training camps. So no, it doesn't
Little drummer girl.
surprise me. Yeah, yeah. It isn't a surprise at all. But I'll tell you this, Kaiser. Again, there is hope, like we talked about with the kids earlier, and with people like Tommy Robinson. I mean, this guy has got the Constitution, I swear, of a vending machine. You know how those things can take a beating. This guy has been imprisoned. He's been attacked in every way you can imagine. He was beaten almost to death in one of his prison stays by a bunch of Muslims, and yet this guy just keeps on going. And he's now running for a minister of the European Parliament.
MEP.
Yeah, and he's doing that through the UKIP party now. For Americans, okay. Tommy Robinson is running for this office, but he's basically running for it to bust it up. He wants to be the representation for the people of the UK in the EU who have said we want out, and they're doing everything they can to try and make sure this guy, who is very popular with the people of the United Kingdom, gets silenced. And one of the things that they're trying to do is to get him put in prison. And they keep on trying and they keep on failing. And they tried again today. And this is what I was going to tell you about, Kaiser. What happened today was that he had a contempt of court case, which was thrown out last summer because the Attorney General of the United Kingdom basically found that it was based on all sorts of false premises. It was a completely bogus case. They found one thing that they could charge Tommy Robinson with, though, and that is that he was doing a live feed outside of the courtroom, in an area where the police said he could be. Remember, this is the UK, guys. They do not have a free press over there.
Right.
Don't think that they do. And he asked some of the people who had been found guilty. These were Muslim men who were found guilty of child sex crimes, raping children.
Grooming is their nice little tagline for that, but that is exactly what it is, brother.
Yeah, I try not to call it grooming, because that makes it sound like they were chasing after the kids with a hairbrush, and really what they were doing was just pimping them out and doing things like having taking one girl and having her get gangbanged by 20 Muslim men, and things like that. So
no, I agree with you, but I mean, just like there's a bride and a groom. The groom is expected to groom the bride, and that's the disconnect of language.
Yeah.
And they're grooming them for sex. That's what a groom does. And but their sex was prostitution, forced slavery, prostitution.
Oh yeah, in the worst possible way. I won't get into all of the horrible things that they did, or that are typically done with these gangs, with these rape gangs, is what I prefer to call them. But Mr. Robinson, was asking one or two of them as they left, and had been found guilty, by the way. He was asking one or two of them, well, when they left, what'd you think of your the fact that you were found guilty and that kind of thing? And they told him to be honest here. They told him to piss off and other things. Now, Mr. Robinson is going to be charged. He is. They found today, when he went to court, what they wanted to charge him with, and what they are going to proceed to charge him with, is going to be with the fact that he upset the Muslims that had been found guilty of raping children. In other words, they want to charge him with harassment of them, because he was asking them these questions, because he upset them by asking them these questions. And I got to tell you, Kaiser, somehow I felt like there wasn't going to be a resolution for this today. I don't know what it was that made me think this. I was praying for Tommy and everything, but I did not feel like there was going to be a resolution to this. I didn't feel like there was going to be an end to it one way or the other, and there's not going to be. I've heard rumor that he's going back in July to go on trial for this upsetting of the Muslims. And I know you're going to link this. This is from the Daily Express from today.
Yep.
The headline here is Tommy Robinson to face new court proceedings over contempt allegations. And what that basically means is that they're going to clear the slate and charge him again with contempt of court. And I'm guessing this is going to be...
They're just renaming it.
Yeah, they're just renaming it. I'm guessing this is going to be felony contempt of court, and it's going to center around upsetting these rapists, these these men who have been found guilty of rape. So they're going to try and put him in jail, in prison, and that will be so that he can be gotten out of the way. In other words, so that he can be killed.
Exactly.
Americans, this is something that you should pay attention to, because this is political correctness gone wild. Tommy Robinson's main crime is that he calls out the evils of Islam. He talks about the child sex slavery. He talks about the beatings of non-Muslims. He talks about the mistreatment of women, of Muslim women, in the Muslim in the Muslim world, in the Sharia system, as they say it. And he releases the dogs of war. Now,
No, that is not being captured in the
Okay.
thing.
Okay. All right. Um, and and he brings this out into the open and tells people about this. And this is not something that the Sharia compliant British government, who have been bribed to make Mohammedans into a special protected species, are prepared to deal with. So they want to silence him.
And
And
that's the whole point of this thing, is to make
right.
special protected
Mm-hmm.
classes. They've
Mm-hmm.
done this. Tommy was the beginning. That's a fact.
Exactly. He
Uh,
was.
but they've gone after Sargon of Akkad,
Mm-hmm.
Carl Benjamin.
Yeah.
They've also gone, who's also running for MEP,
Mm-hmm.
and they've also gone after a Scottish guy that
Yeah.
all he did, I can't remember his name now, or it eludes me, but all he did was, as a goof to his girlfriend, puts it on YouTube and makes his pug do, shake my hand kind of thing. But the pug puts
Oh,
his hand up and throws a Roman salute. And honestly,
right. Right.
this whole Nazi salute shit needs to stop, because that is a classical Roman salute. And guess what? And up until the 20s, when Hitler came to power and the war broke out, guess how we pledged allegiance to the flag? A Roman salute, because that is the classical salute to a republic. And nobody wants to talk about the reality of words, about actions,
Mm-hmm.
about salutes. Look,
Yeah.
the salute we do in the military is nothing more, and I have to be explicit on this, raising your visor with your weapon hand, the right hand.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are right-handed. And it was raising your visor, i.e., putting your hat at your cap brim. That is the tradition of the American salute. And we don't tilt it up, we push it up, right? And our hands aren't tilted outwards, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing with the Roman salute. It was to praise our country and to show reverence to it. And yet, because of the war, we changed it to hand on your heart. And whether people like that or not, it's a fact. And we destroy history and we destroy tradition by little pecks of nuance that's bullshit.
No, you're right. And I will say that, as far as I know, the only difference between the old Roman salute and the Nazi salute is that the Roman salute ended with the arm straight out, and the Nazi salute ends with it up to about a what, oh, like a, I don't know, 45-degree
45
angle or
degree
something.
angle, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that's really the only difference. As a matter of fact, that's why the Nazis did it that way. They copied the Roman salute because they, it was very fascinating. The Romans wrote this themselves. They said that the Germans are either, at your feet or at your throat. The Germans had a great deal of
Yep.
admiration for ancient Rome. They did. And when you
You're
pointed
right.
out earlier, what you pointed out earlier was absolutely true. Hitler's vision for Europe was that it was to be a giant trading bloc, which would encompass all of the European countries that we know of now, including Russia, and probably including Siberia, and
Yep.
Japan. Japan would have everything below that. I don't know how they intended to divide up Africa, but it was to be a sort of pseudo Roman Empire. Honestly, I think if the Axis had won the war, they would have eventually wound up fighting each other. But um, flash forward 70 years, and as you said, what do you see Junkers and the rest of them doing? You see them running a European Union and wanting to strengthen that union even, and now even talking serious talk about a European army. And
Yep.
that just to keep the nations in line.
They've already
And
done it in France with the Yellow
right.
Vest movement. We've
Oh
seen
yeah.
this. The vehicles are, look, Junkers, this is a
Mhm.
fact Americans don't know. And you probably do know because you're as clued in as I am. But this really disgusts me. And I mean this in all sincerity. Uh, what was the name of that dive bomber that used to drop bombs in Poland and everywhere? Oh, it
The
was the
Stuka.
Junkers. Yeah, the
Well,
Stuka made by Junker.
that's correct.
And
Yes.
and so he has a false citizenship. And look, this happened a lot during the Second World War, where people after the war migrated, and he is the grandchild of a Junker. And this is how they look. The only person who was a manufacturer was Krupp, and it was if I remember right, it was like a bastard son or something of a Krupp. It might have been a cousin. I don't know. It was somebody that was ancillary to the family, and he was given up as a petard to throw them off. And guess what? Krupp Heavy Manufacturing still exists in Germany. So does Tyson. So does Henschel. All these companies that had the ties back in the Second World War were allowed to elude any prosecution.
Oh yes.
And it was done, honestly, it was done by America, Britain, and then in 48, Israel. Israel's complicit in this too. And that's the secrets they don't want out. And they're important because it's the globalist mentality in America, and this is what I think Trump is trying to fix. America became empire, and I believe it started under my first war was the Gulf War, brother, and I believe it started under Bush Senior, and that's a Republican, and
Oh
that's my
yeah.
thoughts.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you saw this these very close ties, and this was even before the Second World War between companies like General Electric and Siemens, both of whom obviously are still in
Yep.
business. Very close business
Bayer,
ties. Yeah,
who manufactured Zyklon B.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. I mean, this is the sort of thing that it's very difficult to avoid. But to my mind, just to kind of close things out, um, what we need to shoot for constantly is power to the individual as much as possible. Um,
Yes.
it, government can do some things well, but we have to be careful or it will run wild. There will be abuses because there's money and power to be had. And that is very difficult for some people to resist. In fact, it is impossible for some people to resist because it's just again it's part of ego again. They have to have it, and you see it in all of the political families, even the Obamas. You saw, I swear, I saw this. In my political spider sense, just jangled all over when this happened. When Ted Kennedy introduced Obama in 2008, I said, there it is. They're handing off the torch.
Yep.
So now the Obamas are a fully invested political family. Let no one make any mistake. They have now have the inheritance. The Kennedys are still around, the younger ones, but yeah, for all intents and purposes, the torch has been passed along to the Obamas. They will carry this throughout this century.
That's why you're
Um,
seeing the division still happening.
Certainly.
Honestly, Obama started the division. Look, everybody can talk all the smack they want. I know Pink Floyd had a awesome album that came out called The Division Bell,
Mhm.
and Obama rang it. And that's the purpose of this podcast is how to unring it. I don't think there's a way to do it, but there's a way we have to recognize what happened, when it happened, and we have to identify it. I mean, because if we don't, guess what? the people who are most at at they just are so adverse to bring this back are the people who lived under communism because they see how it foments and it's
Mm-hmm.
coming to our shores in the West, and it will
Yeah.
dilute and pollute us.
Well, you see what Croatia is doing, and Hungary and the Czech Republic. You see how they're reacting to the European Union, and that's
Italy and
and
Austria now.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, Italy, which actually surprises me, because they can, but the Visegrad countries, certainly because they understand what it was like to live under the boot of totalitarianism and they don't want it. That's why if you take a vacation to Europe and you don't want to be just overwhelmed by Muslims, you'll go to Hungary or one of these other countries, or even or even go to Romania and take the Dracula tour, which yes, folks, they have one.
It's an
Um,
awesome tour, by the way.
yeah. um, well, I'm not going to get into some of the castles that they lived in there because some of them, you look at them and you look at the prominences they were built on, and you go, how in the hell did they do that? But anyway, um, they know what it's like to live under this kind of totalitarianism, and they're not having any of it. And that's the reason, honestly, Kaiser, in my opinion, for the European army, they want to
Yep,
subjugate those countries because they ain't going to do this voluntarily. They're just not going to do it. But
I agree.
Kaiser, I really want to thank you for having me on. This has been the second thing I've done since I've gotten back, and it's allowed me to vent a little bit. And all I can say to people is, guys, recognize that it's not the rank and file that are evil on the left; it's their leaders, and they're leading the rest of the left around by the nose. And the best thing that we can do is be the best examples of the people that we want to be.
Yep.
Because if we compromise that for a temporary gain, whatever it is, it can be a wall, it can be a piece of legislation, whatever. Then we lose big in the end, and
Yep.
that we can't do. And I guess Kaiser, I'd say to people, check me out. I'm Agador on, at Spreely and also on Mumblet and on Gab. Yes, and I'm at UBG Contact on Twitter for now, until Twitter has a purge, which I'm sure they will fairly soon. And please check out the Unpleasant Blind Guy. It's a show that's on Spreaker.com, and it's also on YouTube.com through
Yep.
SHR Media, and it's on the Western Free Radio Network. Showtimes are Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern and midnight Saturday. And doing wrapping up a series called The Way Back, and The Way Back commentaries right now. And then I'm going to be rolling into something brand new, which will be a somewhat of a merger with the English Defense League radio show, which I'm on live um, at 3:30 p.m. Thursdays and Sundays on Blog Talk Radio. Just go there and look for EDL Radio, and you'll find it. And you'll find us. I want to thank you, Kaiser, for having me on because it's been a really good discussion.
Awesome. Well, we'll talk after the show real quick, but
All right.
I'm going to play the outro. I did a poem today of Rudyard Kipling. My God, my words are just salad today, right, brother?
Rudyard
But
Kipling.
Rudyard Kipling, I know, brother. But the outro's gonna be the Wrath of the Saxon, Wrath of the Awakened Saxon, and I think you guys will all enjoy it. And I'm about to play it right now, and then I will see you, Dave, and all those links will be posted when this does happen. God bless, be well, be safe, Dave, and you are always welcome in Kaiser's Castle.
God
And
bless you, brother. Thank you.
that's the truth. All right. Here we go.
Came to them very late. with long arrears to make good, when the Saxon began to hate. They were not easily moved. They were icy, willing to wait, till every count should be proved, ere the Saxon began to hate. Their voices were even and low. Their eyes were level and straight. There was neither sign nor show when the Saxon began to hate. It was not preached to the crowd. It was not taught by the state. No man spoke it aloud when the Saxon began to hate. It was not suddenly bred. It will not swiftly abate. Through the chilled years ahead, when time shall count from the date that the Saxon began to hate.